Hello guys, this is part 4 of ASP.NET video series. In this session we will be talking about events at the application level in an ASP.NET web application. In an ASP.NET web application, events can occur at 3 levels. At the application level, example include application start, application end, session start, session end, etc. And at the page level, examples include page load, page render, page unload, and at the control level, examples include the click event of a button control, selected index change event of a drop-down list, etc. We will be talking about page level and control level events in a great detail in a later video session. In this session, we will be concentrating upon application level events. In part 3 of this video series, we have spoken about view state variable, and we have understood that view state variables are used as a mechanism to preserve data across page post back, but by default a view state of one web form is not available in another web form. For example, if I create a view state variable on one web form, I can only access that view state variable on that web form 1. If I try to access that on web form 2, you know that basically will be null. But however, if there are situations where I want to move data from one web form to another, so what are the different techniques are used available in ASP.NET? There are these 4 are the techniques. These 4 are the techniques, okay, to send data from one web form to another web form. We can make use of query string, cookies, session states, and application state. We will be talking about query strings and cookies in a later session. In this session, we will concentrate upon session state and application state variables. Now, session state variables are available across all pages, but only for a given single session. You can think of session state variable, as like single user global data. Single user global data for a given user across all the web pages. You can access session state variable only the current session. Only the current session has access to its session state, whereas application state variables are available across all pages and across all sessions. You can think of application state variables as multiple users global data. All session can read and write application state variables. Okay. So in short, session state variables are like single user global data, and application state variables are like multiple user global data. In an ASP.NET Web application, global ASAX file contains the application level events. Here the picture shows a snapshot of the global.ax file, and if you look at this, we have application underscore start. We have application underscore start event. So when does this event get fired? The event gets fired if your application is not already running. And when the first request for a web form in the application, reaches IIS, the web server, it loads the application's assembly into the memory. That is when the application starts up and this event gets fired. Application end event. Application underscore end event. When will this be fired? Whenever there are no more active sessions. If the last session has already expired, then the application underscore end event fired. Application underscore error event. Application underscore error event. When does it get fired? Whenever there is an unhandled exception. Okay. If there is an unhandled exception, the application underscore error event gets fired. In fact, in real time, we actually use application underscore error to handle unhandled exceptions and log them to a database or to event viewer. In fact, we will be looking at an example of that in a later video session when we talk about exception handling in ASP.NET session underscore start. When does this event get fired? Whenever a new user, visits your application, whenever a new whenever a new session gets started. Now, what is a session? We will talk about that in a bit. A session can be okay. Where we are, I have to show you the full presentation slide. A session can be treated or considered as a Unix instance of a browser with a unique session ID. We will be talking about that a bit. So whenever a new user connects to your application, session underscore start event gets fired. Session underscore start events get fired. This one. When does a session underscore end event fired? Whenever the session of an existing user, times out, that is when session underscore end event fires. Now session timeout can be configured in web.config file using a timeout attribute. Now if you look at these events, these can be classified as application events and session events. Example of application events are application -start underscore start, application underscore end, application underscore error. Example of session events are sessions underscore start means means session. In general, application events are used to uh, in general application events are used to initialize data that needs to be available to all the current session of the application, whereas a session events are used to initialize data that needs to be available only for a given individual session, but not between multiple session. Let's look at example. Now, if you look at this, is pretty simple example that we have in the application underscore start. Application underscore start. Application underscore start event of global dot ax. What we are doing here, we are actually creating two application state variable. We are creating two application state variables: total application, total user session. Total applications, total user session. There are application level variable. These are application level application variables, application state variables. Okay, and we are initializing them to 0. We are initializing them to 0. Now remember, application state variable can be accessed by all sessions. Okay, now what we are doing here is in the application underscore start event, total application. Total application. Basically, I want to say total application. Basically, I want to say how many times an application starts up, and whenever new users connect to the application, we basically want to figure out how many users are connected to your applications. At the moment, we want to find out number of users online with the application. How many active sessions do we have to our application? Okay, so if we want to find out total, number of application running, how many instances of this application running. Since application underscore start will be fired only once, when the application underscore start event is fired, we are creating the value of total applications. We are incrementing. Means, when the application underscore start event is fired, we are incrementing the value of total application by 1. Here you can look at, you can see that you can look at in that event. And in the session start event, we are incrementing in the session start and session underscore start event, we are incrementing the total user session by 1, because every time a new session is established, incremented increment established increment total user session by 1, that will tell us how many users are currently online. And whenever the session ends, and whenever the session ends now, how do you determine a session has ended? That is determined by the session timeout attribute in web.config file, and default is 20 minutes. So whenever an existing session expires, decrement the total user session value by 1. Decrement the total user session value by 1. Okay, this piece of code goes in global.axax file, and in webform 1, and in webform 1 this and in webform 1, what are we doing? We are simply retrieving. The data from application state variable and printing it out. So number of application, to print that we are using the total application count and number of user online. We are using total user session. Total application, total user session, application state variable. Okay, let's look at this in action. Let's flip to Visual Studio. So now we are going to see that in code, in action. Look at them in action. And so go to the Visual Studio first. Where is the Visual Studio? My Visual Studio is here. Okay, open it. Now create a new project. We are going to create a ASP.NET web application. ASP, click this and name your project application events. Demo, and choose the location. My location would be part 4. Okay, select the folder, create. We need web form, and now it will create our project application events demo. So we need to delete some unwanted files and folder from that project. So I'll tell you which folder you need to delete. Okay, now first of all close this and go to the Solution Explorer. Now first of all you need to remove click switcher, delete it, and site mobile master, delete it, site master, delete it, and now keep the global AX file and delete this, remove contacts, now click remove this font folder, remove content folder, remove application start folder. Okay, So what you need to do now, you should remove this global.axax file I'm telling to, and okay, so we have removed that. Now we need again the global axax file. So right mouse button, click, add, go to new item. Where is the global? Here it is, global application class. Choose it, and now from here what you need to do, go to the notepad and copy and paste the notepad coding. From here what you need to do, copy this piece of code. You may copy whole the coding also, but I'm just trying to copy it. So from here, paste it. Okay, as you can see, so we have exactly the same code that we have seen on presentation slide. This code is exactly the same code which we have seen on this presentation slide here. Okay, you can match it also. Void application underscore start event. There you can see all this coding. Okay, got it. Okay, okay, then what we need to do, we need to go back to our coding. On the webform 1.ax px.cs file, so we need to first add a webform. Where is the webform? Here it is, and go to its now go back to your notepad, and from here you go to copy and paste this in this piece of coding. You need to copy and paste. Go back to your coding and paste it here, the copied coding. Now then what? So this is the similar coding which you have seen here on this presentation slide. Okay, you can see it, match it. So now let me run this. Before running this, I also need to paste some coding here in the web.config file. What we need to do in the web.config file, you should copy and paste this connection string. That is not required, but I'm just pasting it here. Okay, and we'll also need to paste this session state mode in prop coding also. So go back to your coding, and it should be below this system.web. Okay, can match it again, system.web. not, it should be below. It doesn't matter where you paste it, but it should be under system.web. Okay, I'm just pasting it here. Okay, now save everything. Go to web form 1, save it, global.exe file, save it, web config we already saved. Okay, now run this. Let me press Ctrl F5. So we are running this for the first time. So it should show the number of applications as 1 and number of users online as 1. Okay, as you can see, number of application 1 and number of user online 1. Now if you look at this, you know you can consider this as a session. This as a session. Now this browser instance will have a unique session ID. This browser instance will have a unique session ID. This is the session ID that gets sent to the web server, and based on that session ID, the web server knows, okay, this is one user. The web server knows this is the one user. Now if I copy this URL, means I copy this URL and open another browser instance, means I open the another Google Chrome instance. Where is the Google Chrome? Oh my, where is the Google Chrome? Here it is. Okay, here is the another instance of Google Chrome, and type the copied URL in the Chrome tab. Then you will see number of application is 1, number of application is on users online is 1. Means if I, okay, let's open another instance of Google Chrome and look at that. This, when I paste this URL and I press enter, it shows number of application. Means this is the second another one, and this was the first Google Chrome instance, and in this second instance I have copy and paste the same URL as that of first one, Google Chrome's. And see, number of application is 1 and number of users online is also 1. Now let's first understand what we mean by a session. First let's understand what we mean by a session. A user session, now a user session can be treated as a unique instance of a browser. If you look at this, at this, this is one instance of the browser. This is one instance of the browser, and this is another instance of the browser, and this is another instance of the browser. Okay, so I basically have two instances. So I basically have two instances of the browsers. Okay, but then I did not end up getting two sessions. I did not end up getting two sessions. That is because by default sessions are cookies. So as long as I have this browser window open, this is the first browser window. This is the first browser window. So when I first establish a session with the web server, I get a session ID. I get a session ID, and that same session ID is used by this browser, and that session ID is used by this second browser as well. Because the session cookie that is stored on this computer, is being shared by both of these browsers, by both of these windows browser. But on the other hand, if I close the browser window, let's close both of them. Let's close both of them and open this browser window. I am open the browser window. Now in the above showed, now in this browser, if I type this same URL and click enter, now since I close the existing browsers window, these session cookies would have been deleted now, and that session ID is gone. Now when I open a new browser window and when I try to navigate to that page, and when I try to navigate to that page, I get a new session ID. This is the new session ID. I get a new session ID, but I did not get, okay, a new session ID. So the web server now treats this new session session ID as if it is coming from a new user. So this becomes new session ID to this browser, and the browser treats this new session ID as if it is coming from a new user. So now when I press enter, look at that number of users online. Number of user online is 2. Now in the previous we were having number of users online as 1. Now the session ID is still there in the same cookie, and that session cookies is alive. If I open another Google Chrome window, that is going to happen. What is going to happen? This instance of the Google Chrome window is going to make use of that session ID. So when I navigate to this web form web, means if I open up another Google Chrome, is the Google Chrome, okay, and paste the same URL and click enter. So what is going to happen? This instance of the Google Chrome window is going to make use of that session ID. So when I navigate to this web form, web form 1.axpx, web form web server, web server receives the same session ID. The web servers receive the same session ID at here. So it thinks the request is coming from the The request is coming from the same user, and that is why number of user online is 2. But on the other hand, another way to actually get a different session ID is to use a different browser. Now I can make use of Microsoft Edge. Okay, I make use the Microsoft Edge. You can also use the Mozilla, whatever you have, but I will use Microsoft Edge. Okay, minimize it and put the same URL, and let's see what does happen. Okay, as you can see that the number of user online is now 3. So Microsoft Edge does not make use of the same cookie that Google Chrome is using. So because of which this will have its own session ID. Okay, this will have its own session ID. Make it large. So because of which this will have its own session ID, and when I paste the URL, I have already pasted it. You can see that number of user online is 3 in Microsoft Edge window. So basically you can close the browser window, or you can open a new browser window, a different type of browser window. If you are using Google Chrome and if you try to access the same application using Microsoft Edge, you end up getting a different session ID, and then the number of user will be incremented. Why? Because of this, because of this, because of this session underscore start event will be fired. Whenever a new session ID is received by the web server, it knows that it thinks that it is a new user and starts processing. Okay, all right. So what is a session? So what is a session? Okay, which slide I need to open? So what is a session? We have already spoken that about it. A session is a unique instance of the browser. A session is a unique instance of the browser. So let me show you the slides precisely. So a session is a unique instance of the browser. A single user can have multiple sessions by visiting your application with multiple instances of the browser running with a different session ID on this machine. And how do we simulate? You know, as if we are having a different session ID, you can close the browser window, which will close the existing browser window and open a new instance of the browser. So when you close the existing browser window, the session ID that is associated with that browser using a session cookie is gone, and a new instance of the browser will get a new session ID, because of which the web server treats that request from that browser as a new user, and session underscore start event will be fired, and number of user online will be incremented by 1. Okay, if you go will be incremented by 1. Another Another way is to open a new instance of a different browser. For example, I was using Google Chrome first, but when I use Microsoft Edge, we get a new session ID because of which session underscore start gets fired and the value gets incremented. Okay, and the third way is to basically use cookie-less session. Third way is to use cookie-less session. Now we understood that by default ASP.NET uses cookies to maintain these session IDs. Okay, but you can tell your application not to use cookies. Okay, and how do we do that? Using the web.config file, the web configuration file. In a web configuration file in session state element means go back to your Visual Studio. Where is the Visual Studio? Now open up the web.config file. Here you can see session state mode in proc cookieless is equal to false. We need to turn it on by making it true. So by turning this cookieless to true, attribute to true. So let's turn that to true. All you need do is go and the moment we do that and then run this application look at that. Means first of all you need to close all the opened browsers. Click this and go back to your Visual Studio and save the changes in the web.config file and come to here and run this applications. Control F5. Look at that URL. See this portion. Okay. Let me copy this URL. Now I get a unique, alphanumeric number. This is the unique alphanumeric number. This one, as you can read it, that is nothing but the session ID. That is not nothing but a session ID. This one. Okay. Now if I copy this and then I open another instance of Google Chrome and paste the copied browser and and then I open another instance of, okay, let me minimize it and go to open up another instance of Google Chrome. Where is it? Here it is. Okay, it's open up 3, but I need only 1. Okay, if I paste it here and again press it, so I paste that there's a number of user online is also 1, and then I open another one. Look at that. So if I open, what is mean? If I open another one and do the same thing, copy and pasting, what will happen? If third instance is open up, where is the Google Chrome here? Here it is. It is obviously will show the same thing. Okay. And if you look at the session ID, I just copied session ID as well. Means instead of that, if you copy this URL and open up the notepad and paste it here, and I want to just so we have shown that in the third browser you will also have the same number of users online. Okay. We need to open only these two one. What is going to happen? The same session ID goes to the web server. So the web server thinks it is coming from the same user. So that is why it will not fire session underscore start event in global.axax file. Because of which the session, the application level means how many number of, okay, go back to your global.axax file and where is the global.axs file. So what is going to happen? The same session ID goes to the web server. We have told this whole thing before. So it will not fire session underscore start event in global session underscore start event will not fire, of which because of which the session, the application level underscore start application of total user session will not be incremented, so it is still 1. So it is still 1, as you can see that in a second instance of Google Chrome. If I open up the third Google Chrome, it will show the same thing. Okay. If you look at that URL, this one, and copy this URL, I have already copied it and paste it here again. Okay, but I will now copy this one. I remove the session ID from it. Okay. So we don't have this session ID. You can get rid of that. I have removed this session ID from here. So I am copying this. So if you look at this, I want to go to localhost at this port 44375 number. I want to retrieve this web form. I want to retrieve this web form.axpx. So now let's copy that. I have copied it. Let's open another instance of Google Chrome window. So if I go to open the Google Chrome, let's see what does happen. Where is the Google? Here it is. And I paste this copied URL without the session ID. We have removed that session ID. And now when you uh, look at this is going, what is going to happen? Means if I press now enter, look at that number of users online. Look at this in these two browser, it is same session ID. These two browser has the same session ID. Okay, but we have removed. We got different session ID now when we removed that previous session ID and then paste that into this third instance of Google Chrome, then we get a new number of users online. That is 2. Now here when I try to visit that there you will see the new session ID. Okay. So and then so as I have a different session ID and this is the session ID and this is the session ID. This is the new session ID now used by this browser to communicate with the web server. The web server thinks this is a different user and then fires session underscore start event. Means go back to here. The sessions underscore start event fires, which will then obviously increment the value of total session. Total session. Total user session. Total user session and then it is incremented by 1 total user session. Okay, in the session underscore start event. So it is incrementing in this the value by 1 in this session underscore start event. That is why it gets incremented. That is why it is get incremented from 1 to 2. So basically, there are 3 ways to get a new session ID. So basically, there are 3 ways. So basically, there are 3 ways to get a new session ID and force the session underscore start starts event to execute. One is close the existing browser window and then open a new instance of the browser or open a new instance of a different browser. Second, open a new instance of a different browser or use cookieless sessions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.